So it looks like the tree has almost eaten the whole no contact hazardous substances sign that's been here since before we were able to get any kind of attention on cleaning up Redmond Creek. You know, now we can't get it out of the tree.
If you look at areas of concern, these were big industrial towns in the early 1900s before there was an environmental protection agency regulating the discharge of the byproducts of the industrial processes. So they would be dumped into a lake or they would be put in a pipe and sent down into a river with very, very little control. Eventually, in many of those towns, the industries dried up. The pollution that they had deposited did not. The International Joint Commission and Canada and the US worked together to identify 43 areas of concern on the Canadian side and the US side. And these areas of concern basically were severely degraded environmental areas notable for significant environmental impairment.
You did not recreate in the river. It was that polluted. You used to use the term oozing because the river didn't so much flow, but it oozed out to the lake.
Through 100 years of industrialization, you can imagine the amount of contamination that was put into the waterways and ultimately into the sediments. The Buffalo River was essentially a dead zone. In fact, the one quote that comes out of it was mosaic of colors.
We had problems here with not just petroleum, but also lead because it was a historic legacy site and gasoline was leaded back when they had the bulk storage tanks here.
What their treatment system consisted of was a couple of ponds where the water would get pumped in and then they would aerate it. And that's how they were treating it, was so that we could breathe it instead of drink it. It would give you a headache, it would make you dizzy, it was that bad.
Well, I think because of your activism early on and then the group's ability to learn things, we were able to get on the radar of the EPA and the Great Lakes Legacy Act.
As funding came in through the Great Lakes Legacy Act and then the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative, that funding really gave us the impetus to get work done and demonstrate to the community that we can get work done and we can really do it in a way that would positively impact the community. The saying goes, it takes a village, and the AOC program is really about the village pulling together, working together, developing the relationships that are critical, and then getting the work done.
We just recently wrapped up 3 years of dredging in Kingsbury Bay. We dredged out 170,000 cubic yards of material from here. Our primary objective at this site was to try to restore this valuable shallow sheltered bay ecosystem to give fish deeper off-channel habitat, and then also just help establish a variety of wetland vegetation.
St. Louis River is actually a really great example of partnership at work. We have 2 states, the city of Duluth, the city of Superior, as well as an active tribe. So we have local, state, and federal agencies all trying to get the same goals accomplished.
The Fond du Lac Band of Lake Superior seeded about 500 pounds of wild rice in Kingsbury Bay. So targeting some of the near shore shallow zones in the hopes that we have a blank slate and we can get wild rice to repropagate kind of before it gets outcompeted by other species.
Great Lakes Restoration Initiative and the federal funds that were made available really were a big driver in helping us to get close to final delisting of this area of concern. The restoration requires the remediation of all of the old contaminated areas. And once you've remediated, the next question is, what are you going to do with that land? And these sites are now prepared and clean enough for new development to come in and go with the future economy.
The former Erie Freight House used to sit on this site, which when we came along had been falling in on itself for 25 years. This site was leaching contaminants into the Buffalo River. So part of the project here was the environmental cleanup. But if you look out here right now, you see people recreating, hanging out over here. Hard to believe that that would have been the case 5 years ago. So to where we are right now, the attention paid to the river, the attention paid to how you treat the shoreline and what you do is a big difference.
I like to say, if you clean it, they will come. If you clean up an area of concern, you restore it. Well, the environmental benefits, that's what we, of course, are driving. But that leads to economic benefits. But to me, just as important, or maybe even more important, is community revitalization, because now people have places on the waterfront where they can go and gather.
For 100 years, we've had signs that said, danger, do not go here. And now we can have a sign that figuratively says, welcome. This river, still an area of concern, is now the nation's 21st National Water Trail, designated by the National Park Service and the Secretary of Interior as one of the foremost places to paddle a canoe or kayak in the nation.
The cleanup was a stimulus to this community. It's further enhanced the quality of life. We got it done, and it is a tremendous success story.
The redevelopment of the properties along the river, I would say, are directly related to the rehab of the river.
Water quality improvements over all the years has been dramatic. I mean, the water clarity has got much better. The fishing has got phenomenal. The sheer amount of captains that there are in the water nowadays versus years ago, there was only a handful of us in the whole harbor. Now, as we slide out, you will see a multitude of charter boats up here. There's a lot of guys. There's a lot of great people.
Just the amount of recreation in the harbor and wildlife, everything is thriving here. It's pretty cool. People come here to enjoy the water. They want to be outside here. We have awesome wineries nearby too. So we have a big draw of people coming from nearby cities to get away.
People are coming down and hanging out in these industrial slips where they didn't hang out before, and they're staying at hotels that didn't exist before. And so it's really exciting to have the commerce and the recreational activities that didn't exist here before the efforts of the area of concern.
Ours was a 20-year overnight success with a combination of the investment that was happening for the restoration, this reawakening of our community as being a Great Lakes community. We're having an entire new generation that is finding this personal connection to their waterways, and that does bode well for our water.
These AOCs have been AOCs for a long time, and we're at the point now we have the resources through the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative that we really can make a difference. So we want to make sure we use those resources wisely, effectively, but most important, we get the work done.
This project is really one of the final 4 projects to delist Muskegon Lake as an area of concern. I feel like now we grew up. We're where we should have been probably, 50 years ago.
It renovates the community in a way that people get excited again about the fact that they are waterfront communities. They are extremely excited about the impact it's had. From 1987 until 2010, only one AOC was delisted. 2010, the GLRI came along, so since then, we've delisted 5 more. Well, now, with the bipartisan infrastructure law money, that's $1 billion. We've set a goal of having all the actual on the ground and in the water work done at all but 3 AOCs by the end of 2030. It's a moonshot. And in my mind, after 40 years of having contaminated sediment and degraded habitat, it's time to get these done. And now we have the opportunity to do it.